It was just after sunrise on a Saturday. Quiet, cool, the kind of morning where even the birds seemed to whisper instead of sing. I was standing in my kitchen, cradling a fresh cup of coffee, when I heard it, this violent, jagged roar that didn't belong to the countryside I called home. At first, I thought maybe someone had started up a dirt bike or a tractor, but no, it wasn't that. It was chainsaws. More than one, and they were close. I set my coffee down, fast, too fast, and half of it splashed onto the counter, but I didn't care. I bolted out the back door, and what I saw nearly stopped my heart. A crew, 6 guys in orange vests, were out there with saws, ropes, and helmets hacking into the trees that had stood around my barn for over a century. Big oaks, towering elms, trees that survived storms, droughts, and generations of change. Trees that I'd spent 5 years protecting as part of restoring the barn my grandfather had built in 1894. I ran toward them, yelling, "Hey, hey, what the hell do you think you're doing?" The guy in charge, stocky, beard like sandpaper, hard hat tilted back, barely looked up. He raised a clipboard like it was a badge. "OHA authorization," he grunted. "Karen Lutz called 911 this morning about your illegal construction. When the cops didn't do anything, she hired us to handle the obstruction problem." I blinked. Obstruction problem? Construction? Just 2 hours earlier, 2 deputies had shown up at my front door responding to a report about dangerous, unlicensed construction on agricultural land. They walked the perimeter, saw the same old barn with the same old walls, shrugged, and told me to have a good day. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. See, I live just on the edge of a suburban development called Pinebrook Heights, one of those places where the houses look copy-pasted and everyone has matching mailboxes and frowns if your grass grows half an inch too long. I inherited 3 acres and an old barn from my dad, and while my house sits technically inside the HOA boundary, the barn and trees are on a slice of farmland that predates the neighborhood by, 70 years. But ever since Karen Lutz got herself elected HOA president last spring, she made it her personal mission to turn my land into her next power trip. At first, it was letters, passive-aggressive stuff about how the barn clashed with the neighborhood aesthetic. Then came complaints about the trees blocking valuable mountain views for potential buyers. I explained, politely, that the barn wasn't under her jurisdiction. She doubled down with threats of fines and unannounced photo ops, just standing at my property line with her iPhone like she was filming a true crime documentary. But today, she crossed the line. The chainsaws screamed as I tried to get the guy, Tom his name was, to stop. "This land's not under your authority," I told him. "You're trespassing. Those trees are protected. You can't just come in here and—" "Lady who hired us said she had full HOA rights," Tom shrugged. "Said they voted. We're getting paid either way." 12 trees had orange paint marks. 4 were already down, their trunks torn open like the bodies of fallen soldiers. And my barn, my grandfather's barn, was now catching wind from the west for the first time in 130 years. It actually shuddered. I pulled out my phone and hit record. "I'm calling my lawyer," I told Tom. "Go ahead," he said, chuckling. "Karen said you'd say that, said she's got a legal team on standby." I retreated back inside and called Rebecca, my property attorney and longtime friend. She'd handled the estate after Dad passed and knew every inch of the title history better than I did. I didn't even finish describing the scene before she said, "Document everything. I'm on my way." 40 minutes later, Rebecca pulled up like a storm cloud in a blazer. Just as she got out of her car, we spotted Karen, marching across my property like she owned it, clipboard in hand, sunglasses on, heels stabbing into the soft grass like it was her own red carpet. Rebecca walked right up to her. "Mrs. Lutz," she said, calm but sharp, "I'm Mason Bryant's attorney. I'd like to see your written authorization for this work." Karen smiled like she'd been waiting for this moment. "Of course," she said, syrupy as southern sweet tea. She handed over a thin folder like it contained nuclear codes. You'll see, the board voted unanimously to remove hazardous obstructions to property values. The community was in agreement. Rebecca flipped through it, her brows sinking with every page. Then she closed it with a snap. "This is an HOA resolution," she said, "which only applies within HOA jurisdiction. This barn and this land sits on agricultural property protected by state zoning law. You have zero authority." Karen's smile wobbled. "Our legal team disagrees. The shadows from these trees cross into OHA lots. That gives us standing to act in the interest of the neighborhood." "That's not how property law works," Rebecca shot back. "And even if it did, which it doesn't, you'd still need permits for tree removal. Where are your permits?" Karen's voice faltered. "Permits? For a few trees? Don't be dramatic." That's when Rebecca turned and called out to Tom Garrison. "Mr. Garrison, you are actively committing criminal trespass and destruction of protected property. Half of these trees are heritage species. The fines could bankrupt your business." Tom froze like someone had cut his power. "Lady, we were just hired to do a job." "You were hired to break the law," Rebecca said flatly. 3 of these trees are listed under the State Historical Preservation Act. That's $50,000 in fines per tree, minimum." Tom dropped his saw and waved to his crew. "Pack it up, boys. We're done here." Karen lost it. She stomped toward us, red-faced and livid. "You haven't heard the last of this. I'll use every penny in the HOA's legal fund if I have to. That barn is next." Rebecca didn't flinch. "And now you've just made a verbal threat on camera while admitting intent to commit further property crimes. I strongly suggest you leave." Karen stormed off, heels catching in the dirt. Rebecca and I spent the rest of the day photographing stumps, gathering samples, documenting every broken branch. She called in Dr. Lily Alvarez, an environmental consultant, who arrived within hours and nearly cried when she saw the damage. "These oaks are over 140 years old," she whispered. 2 are registered as heritage trees. And this one, she pointed to the biggest stump, was home to a nesting pair of spotted owls. That's a federal protected species. The damage wasn't just historical, it was ecological. Those trees formed a buffer that maintained a microclimate for local birds, kept the hillside from eroding, and shielded my barn from the harsh afternoon sun. Now with them gone, the whole balance was shifting, and fast. Within days, local news picked it up. "OHA president orders illegal tree removal," scrolled across the screen. They ran drone footage of my half-bald property, showed Karen at a board meeting ranting about eyesores and cleaning up the neighborhood. Homeowners came out of the woodwork, stories of petty fines, threats over patio furniture, even one guy who got a $200 citation because his dog barked during dinner hours. Then came the real kicker. Rebecca's firm dug into property sales records and found out Karen's brother-in-law was a developer. He'd quietly expressed interest in my land 6 months ago, said it had investment potential if the structures were cleared. That's when it all clicked. Karen had been trying to force me out. We filed a civil suit that same week. Criminal trespass, environmental damage, destruction of heritage property, and malicious intent. When the HOA board saw the charges, 3 members quit immediately. Their insurance company refused to cover any of it, citing criminal liability. And then came the courtroom. 6 months later, Judge Holland presided over a packed room. Karen sat stiff and pale, no longer HOA president, no longer smug. One by one, witnesses testified. Dr. Alvarez about the owls, the engineer about how the barn would rot without its shield, Tom Garrison, who said under oath that Karen told him, "Don't worry about the legality, I'll cover your butt." The judge didn't hold back. "In my 28 years on the bench," he said, "I've rarely seen such an arrogant abuse of authority. The defendant's actions were not only unlawful, they were manipulative, self-serving, and downright cruel." He ruled in our favor. $820,000 in actual damages, $300,000 in punitive, all legal fees covered, and mandatory replanting of heritage trees under state supervision maintained for 20 years. Then he added, "This court recommends the district attorney pursue criminal charges for willful destruction of protected property." Karen nearly collapsed. That was the last time I saw her. And the barn? Still standing, weather-beaten, but proud. We installed protective siding, added a new windbreak with native shrubs, and hung a sign in front. History stands here. Now, I'm not saying I won. I lost trees I loved. I lost trust in my neighbors. But I sure as hell didn't lose to someone who thought power gave her the right to erase a piece of my family's history. But I'll tell you this, HOA